This video is brought to you by Against the Flow of Mississippi. Against the Flow of Mississippi is a book about Jake Fayard, a Marine veteran who is unhappy with the political machine running the state of Mississippi. He decides to fight the corruption from the inside. Jake will face more challenges than he ever has and will stand up for what he thinks is right. His notoriously hot temper will push him to the edge of murder, along with his friend and brother Kobe Barhanovich. Together, they will fight the system and give the power back to the citizens of Mississippi. Against the Flow of Mississippi is now available on Amazon. A link to the book will be placed in the description below. Welcome to History in the Eyes of a Southerner with your host, Anthony Allen. On this channel, we will take a journey through time and relate history to the contemporary eyes of modern America. I hope you enjoy the ride as I investigate and document the wonderful events that have shaped our present world. Okay, let's try it again. Seems like every time I try to make this video, I have a problem. Anyway, good morning. Welcome to History in the Eyes of a Southerner. Your host, Anthony Allen, and I am doing this video because I want to introduce a new playlist. I'm not going to make a new channel because I think it fits right in good here with History in the Eyes of a Southerner. I'm just going to do a playlist. Now, depending on how you, or which scale you use, depending, I'm either considered a Gen Xer or a millennial. I'm kind of right there on the edge. Gen X, I've seen the scale go all the way up to 1985, which is what I would like to believe, considering I was born in 1984, and I tend to fit in more with that crowd. I've seen the millennial scale start at about 1980. That being said, I was raised by, not even by boomers. And I know Buddy Brown did a song called Raised by Boomers. And he had a lot of good points, and that's kind of what this is going to be along the lines of. But my grandma is the one that raised me. And I want to be talking about that a little bit. And how I was raised by my grandma, who grew up in the Depression in southwest Mississippi. And a lot of her ways, I don't think she'd realized that 1950 had come and gone yet. A lot of things she did. Now, granted, there's a lot of things she did that was taboo, but a lot of things that ladies of that generation did not do. It didn't bode well for them. It wasn't a good image on them, I guess is the best way I can put it. Even doing things that now would be considered perfectly whatever. But back then was considered very unladylike. I'm trying to think of a nice descriptive term for it. It was, I guess, the best way I could put it is taboo. Just that's the easiest way I could put it. It's just it was taboo. The fact that she was divorced 3 times and she was a Methodist, or actually, yeah, she was a Methodist, and not only was she a Methodist, but she actually was a Methodist from Southwest Mississippi, Monticello, Brookhaven, Mississippi area. Yet her first husband was a first-generation American. I mean, her first husband had several strikes against him. First and foremost, he was from Boston. I mean, that's, the war hadn't even been 100 years before they met. Still fresh on the minds of a lot of Southerners. I mean, it kind of still is some of us, but not as bad as it was 70 years ago. And I mean, we're talking 1950, 1951. So that's strike one, as he was from Boston. His second strike was that he was a first-generation American. He had actually immigrated from Italy. Well, not him. His parents. He was born in Massachusetts, but during the teens, I believe, shortly after or shortly before the outbreak of World War I, they had immigrated to Boston. So him and his older sister were the first to be born in the U.S. His older sister just died a couple years ago. Nice lady. I believe she was 101 years old. So that's strike two. And strike three was he was Catholic. Oh boy. Now we stepping way off into it. And of course, now we stepping into it again because she got divorced. She was married 3 times. She was divorced 3 times. Again, in today's world, not necessarily a completely unheard of way of life. The 1950s, 1960s, 1970s, with her upbringing, you just didn't do things like that. And my grandma had 2 older sisters. Both of them are dead now, but in fact, one of them died about 6 months ago, and she was in her 90s. In fact, I think they both were in their 90s. And it was just understood that, again, you just don't do stuff like that. And they pretty well let her know, and they led very traditional lives as far as, they were married to one man. They never divorced. They stuck with their husbands until their husbands were dead. And after that, they didn't have anything else going there. In their era, it was the way it should be. Again, we know that this is not very common as of today, but again, different generation, different upbringing. Well, what I want to do is I want to look at my upbringing. And I want to talk about things on this channel that I just, for the life of me, have no understanding of. And I don't really watch the news anymore. I don't keep up with the social justice. And yes, I'm going to be talking a lot about social justice. Discrimination of people that I don't even know if you could really call them victims of discrimination. I'm going to be talking about that. I'm going to get very politically incorrect. And I'm going to try to watch my language, but it's going to be very hard. Yeah, I try to keep this channel fairly clean, fairly educational. So anyway, that's the series. I think I'm going to call it The 80s Man That Don't Understand. Or The 80s Kid That Don't Understand. I think that's an appropriate title. Because I certainly do not understand a lot of these things. And a lot of these are really driving me crazy. So, welcome to the 80s Kid That Don't Understand. Y'all help me understand this stuff. Make it make sense, please. History in the Eyes of a Southerner. Your host, Anthony Allen.